Right then, Forest faithful, gather around because what I'm about to tell you will have you questioning everything you thought you knew about this transfer window. We're 5 days out from deadline day, and whilst everyone's been watching the arrivals at the city ground, something far more dramatic has been brewing behind those closed doors. Something that could change the entire trajectory of our season. Picture this. The gaffer who brought us back to European football is having heated discussions with the very people who should be backing him. The left back we've been crying out for all summer? He's finally within touching distance, but there's a twist you won't see coming. That lightning-fast winger we've been chasing? Personal terms are done, but the drama around getting him signed is absolutely mental. And here's where it gets proper juicy. Whilst Nuno's been publicly smiling and waving after our unbeaten start, behind the scenes there's been a power struggle that's got everyone at the club walking on eggshells. The very people meant to be building this squad for European glory? They're at each other's throats. But that's not even the half of it, because whilst we've all been focused on who's coming in, there's a massive departure brewing that nobody's talking about. Someone who's been instrumental in our rise is packing his bags, and when that announcement comes, it'll send shockwaves through the entire fan base. You think you know what's happening at our club? Think again. I've got 5 bombshells that'll leave you absolutely stunned. Stories of rejected bids, last-minute U-turns, and boardroom battles that make Game of Thrones look like CBeebies. So here's what I need from you right now. Smash that like button, because this is the kind of inside information that changes everything. And more importantly, I want to hear your thoughts in the comments, because after what I'm about to reveal, you'll have plenty to say. Right then, let's start with the defender who's been playing hard to get, and why his change of heart could be the key to everything. There's a 22-year-old Danish international who's been the missing piece in Nuno's defensive puzzle, and the breakthrough we've all been waiting for has finally arrived. Now, Nuno's been absolutely desperate for fullback cover all summer long. We've got Neco Williams bombing forward on the left, but what happens when he needs a rest? What happens when the fixture list gets mental and we're playing twice a week in Europe? That's been the question keeping the gaffer awake at night. Well, I'm talking about Victor Christiansen. And the latest developments around his potential move to the city ground are absolutely massive. Here's the thing about Christiansen. This lad didn't exactly set the world alight during Leicester's relegation season. In fact, he came in for some serious stick from the Foxes fans who expected more from their big Danish signing. But here's what most people don't understand about our gaffer. Nuno sees potential where others see problems. The lad's been out injured at Leicester, hasn't even kicked a ball in the championship this season, which means he's probably gagging for a fresh start. And according to TalkSport's Alex Crook, we're now making serious progress in talks to bring him to the city ground. But here's where it gets interesting. This isn't just about finding cover for Williams. Christiansen's got ambitions that go way beyond sitting on our bench. The Denmark international is desperate to get back into the Premier League spotlight, and he's got his eye on something much bigger: World Cup selection. Think about that for a second. We're not just signing a backup left back, we're potentially getting a hungry international who sees Forest as his pathway back to the top level of football. That's the kind of motivation you can't teach, the kind of drive that transforms good players into great ones. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but his Premier League record isn't exactly stellar, is it? And you'd be right to question it. But remember what Nuno did with players like Max Kilman at Wolves? Sometimes all it takes is the right coach believing in you. The beauty of this potential signing is timing. Leicester are in the championship, they've got financial pressures, and Christiansen's probably looking at our European adventure thinking, that's where I want to be. What I love about this story is that it shows our recruitment team are thinking smart, not just splashing cash. We're targeting a player with international pedigree who's got something to prove. That's exactly the profile that tends to thrive under Nuno's management. So here's my question for you lot. Would you take a punt on Christiansen despite his Leicester struggles? Do you think Nuno's defensive coaching could transform him into the reliable option we desperately need? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I want to know where you stand on this one. But if you think that's dramatic, wait until you hear about the winger saga that's got everyone at the club holding their breath. Right, buckle up because this next story involves a 22-year-old French winger who's been tearing up League One, and we're closer than ever to making him a Red. The lad in question has been absolutely electric for Strasbourg, racking up 6 goals and 9 assists in what was a brilliant campaign. He's the type of direct, pace-heavy winger that gets fans out of their seats. The kind of player who can change games in an instant. I'm talking about Dylan Bakwa, and the latest developments in his potential move to Forest will have you on the edge of your seat. Here's what's been happening behind the scenes. Our club have been working overtime to get this deal over the line. We've already lost Anthony Elanga and Ramon Sosa, with Jota Silva potentially following them out the door. Nuno needed reinforcements, and he needed them fast. Well, according to Belgian journalist Sacha Tavolieri, we've achieved something massive. Personal terms with Bakwa are completely agreed. That's right, the financial package, the contract length, the personal side of things, all sorted. The lad wants to come to the city ground, and we've shown him exactly why Forest is the right move for his career. But here's where it gets mental. We saw a $30 million bid rejected at the weekend. £30 million. That's serious money for a championship club like Strasbourg, but they're holding firm because they know they've got something special on their hands. The timing of this whole saga is absolutely crucial though. Strasbourg have got a massive Conference League playoff game coming up, and they're not making any final decisions until that fixture is done and dusted. Imagine the pressure on Bakwa. He's probably got one eye on potentially sealing a move to the Premier League, whilst trying to help his current club reach European competition. What makes this story even more compelling is the competition we're facing. Leeds United are circling like vultures trying to hijack our deal. But here's the thing. We're in the Premier League, we're in Europe, and we've got Nuno Espirito Santo as our manager. That's a package Leeds simply can't match. The tactical analysis of Bakwa is what gets me most excited. Breaking the Lines described him as having this incredible stand-start dribbling style that leaves defenders absolutely bewildered. He averages over 4.5 shot-creating actions per game and draws more than 3 fouls per 90 minutes. Those aren't just numbers. They're the statistics of a player who terrorizes opposition defenses. But what I love most about his profile is the versatility. He can hug the byline and whip in dangerous crosses, averaging nearly 6 per game, or he can drift inside and create from central areas. That unpredictability is exactly what Nuno loves in his attacking players. The comparison to Elanga is interesting because it suggests Bakwa could slot straight into our system without missing a beat. Same profile, similar attributes, but potentially with even more raw pace and directness. Here's what I want to know from you. Is 30 million too much for a relatively unproven talent? Or is this exactly the type of ambitious signing that shows we mean business in the Premier League and Europe? Let me know in the comments, because this transfer could define our entire attacking approach for the season. But if you think transfer sagas are stressful, wait until you hear about the fullback who's been playing mind games with our recruitment team. There's a 23-year-old Spanish international who initially knocked us back, but word has it he's having serious second thoughts about rejecting Nottingham Forest. Now, right back has been an absolute priority for Nuno all summer. With Ola Aina set to disappear for 6 weeks during the African Cup of Nations, we need proper cover in that position. It's not just about having a backup, it's about having someone who can genuinely compete and maybe even push Aina for that starting spot. The player I'm talking about is Jose Angel Carmona from Sevilla, and his potential U-turn could be the signing that transforms our defensive options. Here's what makes this story absolutely fascinating. Carmona was the one who initially stalled the deal. Not Sevilla, not his agent, not some complicated financial arrangement. The lad himself put the brakes on. Despite Sevilla being perfectly happy to sanction the sale, Carmona wasn't convinced about making the jump to the Premier League. But according to Spanish outlet ABC, something's changed, and he's no longer completely ruling out the possibility of signing for Forest. That's a massive shift from someone who seemed dead set against the move just days ago. Think about what that tells us about our pull as a club right now. A Champions League experienced defender who was initially skeptical about joining us is now reconsidering because of what we represent. That's the power of European football. That's the allure of working under Nuno. And that's the attraction of our ambitious project. Carmona's not just any old fullback either. He's made 55 appearances for Sevilla, a club with serious European pedigree. He's been there, done that at the highest level, including Champions League football. That experience could be absolutely invaluable as we navigate our own European campaign this season. The tactical fit makes perfect sense too. Nuno loves his fullbacks to be defensively solid first and foremost, but with the technical ability to contribute going forward when needed. Carmona's La Liga experience means he's comfortable in possession, he understands positional play, and he's been coached to the highest standards. What's particularly intriguing is the suggestion that we were prepared to offer David Carmo as part of the deal. That's creative thinking from our recruitment team, using a player who hasn't quite found his feet at Forest as a sweetener to land a more suitable target. The Spain under-21 connection is another positive. 3 caps at youth international level suggests this is a player with genuine potential, someone who's been on the radar of one of Europe's most successful national team setups. But here's what I find most encouraging about this whole situation. The fact that Carmona is reconsidering shows our recruitment team haven't given up. They're still working the phones, still making their case, still believing they can convince players that Forest is the right destination. The timing couldn't be more crucial with deadline day looming. If Carmona does decide to say yes, this could be pushed through incredibly quickly. Sevilla want to sell, we want to buy, and now it's just about convincing the player that the city ground is where his career takes the next step. The question for me is whether this change of heart is genuine, or just his agent trying to squeeze better terms out of other potential suitors. But given our need for defensive reinforcement, it's a risk worth taking. What do you reckon? Should we be going all out for a player who initially rejected us? Or does his change of heart show exactly the kind of ambition and pull we now have as a club? Get in the comments and let me know your thoughts, because this one could go either way. But if you think player recruitment is complicated, wait until you hear about the absolute chaos that's been unfolding in our boardroom. Right then, this is where things get properly messy. And I'm talking about a behind-the-scenes drama that could overshadow everything we've achieved on the pitch this season. We're talking about relationships fracturing at the highest level, tensions between people who should be working together to drive this club forward. And at the center of it all is our gaffer, dealing with boardroom politics when he should be focusing purely on football. The man at the heart of this controversy? Nuno Espirito Santo. And the admission he made about his deteriorating relationship with owner Evangelos Marinakis has sent shockwaves through the entire club. Let me break this down for you. Nuno publicly acknowledged that his relationship with Marinakis has fractured. That's not speculation. That's not media nonsense. That's our manager admitting there are serious problems with the man who signs the checks and makes the big decisions. But it doesn't stop there, because there are also allegations of a complete breakdown between Nuno and our global head of football, Edu. 2 of the most important figures at our club apparently can't see eye to eye, and that's creating an atmosphere of uncertainty, just when we need unity most. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Former Forest player David Prutten has weighed in, suggesting that Edu's influence on our summer transfer business might be at the root of these problems. The suggestion is that Nuno wanted different players. He specifically mentions Adama Traoré, but the recruitment strategy has been driven by different priorities. Think about that for a moment. We've spent massive money on players like Omari Hutchinson, $37 million for a young talent. But were they necessarily the players our manager specifically wanted? That disconnect between manager and recruitment team is absolutely toxic for any football club. The agent influence angle makes this even more complicated. Jorge Mendes has had involvement with Forest, and now Kia Joorabchian is part of Edu's network. That's multiple power brokers all trying to influence our transfer strategy, potentially at the expense of what the actual coach wants for his team. What makes this situation so frustrating is the timing. We've started the season unbeaten. We beat Brentford away and drew with Crystal Palace. On paper, everything looks rosy. But underneath the surface, there's clearly massive tension about how we've built this squad and who's making the key decisions. Prutton's comment really hits home. Everything was going so well. Why are you two arguing in the middle of all this? It's a fair point. We're in Europe. We're competing in the Premier League. We've made some exciting signings. So why is there so much drama behind the scenes? The suggestion that Nuno might need to get over his issues with Marinakis and Edu feels incredibly harsh, but it also highlights the reality of modern football. Managers rarely get their way completely when it comes to transfers, especially at clubs with complex ownership structures. What worries me most is how this affects team morale. Players aren't stupid. They can sense when there's tension in the hierarchy. If our manager is at odds with the people running the club, how does that impact his authority in the dressing room? How does it affect our ability to make quick decisions during crucial moments in the season? The meeting between Nuno, Marinakis, and Edu that's supposedly happening could be make or break for the entire season. Either they find a way to work together, or this situation escalates into something that genuinely threatens our European ambitions. Here's what I want to know from you. Do you think Nuno should compromise and accept the transfer strategy that's been imposed on him? Or should he stick to his guns and demand the players he specifically wants? This is about more than just football. It's about power, control, and the direction of our entire club. Comment below because I need to hear where you stand on this absolute mess. But if you think internal politics are dramatic, the final bombshell about our imminent departure will leave you speechless. Right, this final revelation ties everything together, and it involves a departure that'll reshape the entire power structure at our club, probably without most fans even realizing how significant it really is. While everyone's been focused on the drama between Nuno, Marinakis, and Edu, there's been another story developing quietly in the background. A story about someone who's been instrumental in our rise from championship strugglers to European competitors, but who's now preparing to walk away from it all. I'm talking about Ross Wilson, or our sporting director who's been the architect of so much of our recent success. And according to The Athletic's Daniel Taylor, his move to Newcastle United is essentially a done deal. Here's what makes this departure so significant. Wilson has been commenting on all our summer signings in the official club announcements, giving the impression he's still heavily involved in our transfer business. But the reality, according to Taylor, is completely different. Wilson hasn't been particularly involved in our recruitment at all this summer. He's essentially been frozen out of the process. Think about the implications of that. The man who helped build this squad, who understood Nuno's requirements, who had relationships with agents and clubs across Europe, he's been sidelined while Edu and his network have taken control of our transfer strategy. No wonder there's been so much tension and confusion about our summer business. The timing of Wilson's departure tells its own story. Taylor suggests that once the transfer window closes, there'll be an official announcement about his move to Newcastle. They're basically waiting until September 2nd to avoid any complications during the final days of the window. What's fascinating is that Newcastle haven't wanted to add such a senior figure to their team with so little time left in the transfer window. They're being strategic about when they bring Wilson in, which shows how highly they rate his abilities. But here's the really telling part about Wilson's role at Forest. Whilst he's been dealing with various administrative tasks and commenting on signings, he's not been the one picking our transfer targets. Taylor was very specific about this. He's not the guy who picks the next striker. They've got various others who do that. That explains so much about the disconnect we've seen this summer. Our official sporting director hasn't been directing our sporting strategy. Instead, we've had Edu working with his network of agents and scouts, essentially operating a parallel recruitment structure. The irony is that Wilson's departure might not leave the gap it would have done 6 months ago, precisely because Edu has already established himself as the front man for our recruitment. But what it does signal is a fundamental shift in how our club operates. We're moving away from the model that got us promoted, and into Europe, towards something completely different. For Newcastle, this is a massive coup. They're getting someone who understands the Premier League, who has experience building squads on various budgets, and who's proven he can work effectively with demanding owners and complex situations. The question for us is whether this departure represents the end of an era or simply the natural evolution of a club that's outgrown its original structure. But given all the tensions we've discussed, it feels more like the former than the latter. What concerns me most is the lack of continuity. Wilson represented institutional knowledge about what works at Forest, what type of players suit our style, what kind of characters fit our dressing room culture. That knowledge is walking out the door and heading to St. James's Park. Looking back at everything we've covered today, the transfer near misses, the boardroom tensions, the power struggles between different factions, Wilson's departure feels like the culmination of a summer that's changed our club in ways we're only just beginning to understand. So here's my final question for you. Does this departure worry you? Or do you think it's time for Forest to evolve beyond the structure that got us here? And here's what I really want to know. After everything we've discussed today, are you more excited or more concerned about where this club is heading? Hit that like button if this content has opened your eyes to what's really happening at the city ground. Subscribe if you want more inside analysis like this, and get in the comments because after 5 bombshells like these, I know you've got plenty to say. The real question isn't just about this transfer window. It's about whether Forest can handle success, or whether success is already starting to tear us apart from the inside. Next week, I'll be diving deep into how these changes could affect our European campaign. And trust me, what I've uncovered will change everything you think you know about our chances this season.